introduction, and I'd like to thank Professor Dr. Özgür Dinçirek for giving me this opportunity to come and talk to you academicians and the students. We purposefully chose this title as Ethics in Academia because I know nowadays everybody who is doing graduate studies, they're required to have the ethical okays per se, the letters submitted to the graduate institute, and at the end of the day they need to have a copy of that letter bound to their thesis when they're graduating. So it should be taken into consideration, and it should be kind of starting to actually be seeming like the significant thing to have in a study. I actually had something like this. You, the architects, probably are more familiar with drawings like that. As my colleague was talking about my past, I'm a molecular biologist. I don't know much about architecture, but I think when the time comes to talk about ethics, we always meet in the same ground because we have to fulfill certain regulations in order to be ethical in academia. So I will be talking about ethics in academia. Before I go any further, I just wanted to, because I prepared these slides last night, I didn't have much time to include as many slides as I wanted. I have another seminar to reach to in Istanbul 2 days later. So I just wanted to put you on the right ground as to, I know the questions are going to come afterwards, letting you know that there's a process, obviously, that most of you are familiar with regarding how an ethical application should be perceived. So the first step is that once you download the application form from our, what we call it, a BIAC website, then you can either do it on the computer, you can fill it on the computer, print it out, and then have the hard copy be approved by your department head. Through your department head, then that will be sent to the dean's office, and then after the approval of the dean, it will be forwarded to the vice president of the academic affairs at the rector's office. Upon having received that, what they do is that they scan your applications and then they send it to me via internal mail, where I kind of look through the application, see if anything is missing or not. If everything is complete, what I do is that through the ETS program, I forward it to the applicable subcommittees. Let's say that this comes from your department here, architectural department, faculty of architecture. Then I would submit it to the subcommittee of the architectural department. Then, obviously, the expectation of a lot of students and even the academicians is that once they do their applications, it will be an overnight process. Well, it doesn't work like that. In fact, in our bylaws, it mentions that you need to apply 2 months prior to your research initiating date. That means that if you're going to do a questionnaire, you have to calculate your time when that questionnaire needs to be fulfilled. Then you need to apply 2 months prior to that. Then it will be first come, first served basis. For example, we have 2 subcommittees. One of them is the health subcommittee, the other one is the education. They are the most application receiving subcommittees. And there's a chaos there. A lot of students are coming to my office. A lot of students are going upstairs to the ethics office looking for their letters. In fact, they don't even come to us because these people, they think that it will be like an overnight process, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. So it doesn't work like that. So you need to make sure that, especially if you're graduating, let's say come next semester you're going to be graduating. So how many more months do we have? Like 4 or 5 months? So you need to prepare your questionnaires 2 months ahead of time, submit it, and then at least you will have 2 months for the subcommittee to go over whatever application it is. So upon its approval, then you can initiate to start working whatever the questionnaire requires. The other thing that people misses out is that, and it happens a lot of times and it should not, people start doing their questionnaires prior to their applications. This is a no-no. In our bylaws it is mentioned, if we know that if we get notified by the fact that students or the academicians have started pursuing with their questionnaires and then they have not fulfilled the ethical applications, we will actually reject their applications. That means that you're going to have an extension prior to your graduation. So you have to pay attention to these kinds of important facts. Having said that, I can take questions. Let it be like an informal seminar. So if you have any questions, you can stop me and ask me questions anytime. I thought, what a nice way to initiate my talk with a cartoon here. So two students are asking to each other. One of them is saying that if you cut and paste it, whatever it is, from the web, the teacher will say, you plagiarized. The other one responds, I didn't cut and paste it, I printed it, and then I typed it in. Is that plagiarism? I just typed it. So you should probably already have an answer to this. I won't answer it, but further down in my slides, you will find out what actually the answer is to this simple question. You may have a good angel and a bad angel in the sense that the good one is directing you towards not to plagiarize your work, and then the bad one is saying, oh, do it, nobody's going to notice. In fact, it does get noticed, and there are disciplinary procedures that you may have to go through, which is not a nice thing. So in our experience, we have received several plagiarism associated applications, meaning that we had to go through the process of looking into whether the academician or the student has done any plagiarism using whatever the manuscript it is, or if it's a book chapter. Then, upon deciding that it indeed is plagiarized, we tend to be impartial. We tend to ask for opinion of other experts outside the university. This is just to show people that we are unbiased. We are not, because, you know, even if our family members come and they are kind of complained about that they have plagiarized something, we should not be doing anything about that. The name of the committee is Ethics Committee, so we can really not do anything about it. We ourselves have to be ethical. So we need to take care of that. So we do have our bylaws in a longer version than what I summarized here on our website. The website is BIEC, EDU-TR. So let me just go through this telling you what exactly, in a nutshell, our bylaws mean. The overall bylaws cover all EMU community. What does that mean? That means that the academicians, the students who has anything to do with ethical issues have to go through the ethical committee, period. So the next thing is that the bylaws overall, they are founded upon honesty, trust, justice, respect, and responsibility. So this is something that universally accepted, and in all the known and famous universities, we are actually looking into, we're searching other universities' bylaws and then comparing ours with theirs, not only the Turkish universities, but also the foreign universities, so that we are on the same page internationally as well as nationally. So this actually gives us proud that EMU is one of the leading universities, not only in Cyprus, but overall in the world. Like you see this, you saw the advertisement at the beginning. We're in the Times Higher Education kind of scholar. The other thing that the bylaws obtain is that include is that protection of the living and participants, especially if your application involves a human characteristic or even an animal characteristic, that you're going to be questioning humans, you're going to be getting personal information from human beings. Definitely you have to go through an ethical application. Definitely you need to have consent forms being signed by these people, and then you can proceed accordingly. So there is a misconception that some faculties, such as, let's say, engineering faculties, they apply to ethics committee, so they want an approval of their questionnaire. But little do they know that when a human being or an animal is being involved in the questionnaire itself, it doesn't matter whether the application is from an engineering faculty or education faculty. It has to go through the health subcommittees so that they, as the experts, can decide upon how much of the questionnaire is involved with the humans and how correct it is the questions that they're asking. At this level, usually it is not known, but we actually advise to the faculty members or the thesis advisors that if there are going to be any human beings involved or animal models being involved, no matter what faculty you're working in, you need to have at least a co-advisor on the thesis. Somebody who is an expert on whatever human being that you're going, whatever questions that you're asking related to the human beings, the person in the committee should be an expert on that. So it doesn't have to be the actual supervisor, but it can be a co-advisor. It can just be an advisor. The name should appear on the application form so that we are satisfied that it's going towards the correct direction. Information and warning the public about applications containing risks and harms. These are all concerns of the bylaws, and then we mentioned this clearly in our bylaws. Academic freedom of research and publication. Obviously in a university, we have to be free to be able to express our ideas. Otherwise, this is going to, feel like a prison, and in an atmosphere where the scientists or the academicians cannot act freely, they will not deliver properly. So, and then responsibility towards the society. We shouldn't forget about the people living around us, so we need to be respectful towards their rights. So whenever you're going to perform a questionnaire in a public setting, then you have to take into account that those people may not be at the level of your education, so you have to come down to their levels in order to be able to explain yourselves properly so that they understand what you're going to do. Without them understanding the purpose of your research, they should not be signing your questionnaire, they should not be putting their names on their questionnaires. It is you who are responsible in order to make those people understand what the questionnaire is all about. Now I'm going to move on to the most important part regarding the ethical misconduct, which is of interest of everybody, and ethical negligence. There are some keywords that I will list here, and then I will give you short explanations of these keywords, which will kind of in a way clarify today's talk. So plagiarism is #1 ethical misconduct and ethical negligence under the commissions that we actually go through looking for in applications. I will explain in a minute what plagiarism is. Fabrication or falsification, duplication, salami slicing, it sounds like lunch now, but it's not. Failure to acknowledge the supporters and contributors. These are all significant things that people need to pay attention to when you are preparing your questionnaires, when you are preparing your application, or when you're writing a manuscript, when you're writing a book chapter. You have to make sure that it is your own. You have to own it. You shouldn't be using other people's materials. If you have to use, let's say, a table, a figure, or some sentences, which is like a universal thing, then you need to acknowledge those people. You shouldn't be making it look like as if it belongs to you, okay? So let's go through these keywords and then give a little bit more explanation as to what they refer to. So plagiarism in itself, it means cheating. It means piracy. So if you obtain someone else's work without giving them credit, this is one of the #1 issues that you kind of make it towards plagiarism, in the sense that you kind of cheated and you have stolen somebody else's ideas. It is not your own idea, unless you give that person a credit. Presenting others' findings or ideas by using different words without giving any citation. So if you think that you're going to open a dictionary or a thesaurus and use a different word just to cheat, that is also considered plagiarism. Unless you cite that person, you give reference to wherever you're taking that wording or sentence. Submitting part of someone else's printed or electronic work without giving any references. So The word reference is the key here. So long as you're taking someone else's work, you're changing some of the words, you're kind of making it your own in the sense, but you need to give reference, then you're on the right page. Okay? Using someone else's work or ideas without making inappropriate attributions or citing or quoting them. This is again studied under the word plagiarism. So we can also look at plagiarism under two different categories. One of them being intentional, the other one being unintentional. Usually the unintentional version comes across with the newcomers of the graduate studies, like the students. If they have not been taught before, they do not know any better but just copy-paste things from the web, copy-paste things from the already written material, thinking that they are doing a research and they are doing whatever is assigned to them. But that's not correct. So we have to pay attention to, let's quickly have a look at what unintentional plagiarism covers. Not knowing when and how to cite. If you haven't done this before, obviously, you're not going to have any knowledge of performing this, right? So you need some sort of an input, like we're talking today. Now everybody will have some idea in their brains that, oh, okay, I need to do this because somebody from the committee told us that this is the way it should be done. Not knowing how to paraphrase or summarize. So you need to be able to change the structure of the sentence as well as giving citation to the stuff that you're taking from somebody else's work. Not knowing what common language is and recycling an old paper. So these are all considered to be unintentional plagiarism. Whereas the intentional, usually we see more of these examples coming from, I'm sorry to say, but academicians. Rewriting from books or articles. Copying and pasting from web pages and online sources to create a patchwork. Buying or downloading or borrowing papers that belongs to others without citing them. So we have come across a lot of these issues, unfortunately, again, I'm sorry to say, but from the academicians, but I think we're on the right ground. People are kind of starting to understand the significance of abiding by the rules of ethics. So then, after, weeks after we initiated our progress in this committee working along the ethical issues, we have noticed that people have started to take us more seriously. We have been questioned a lot. People thought that we were playing the bad police. There are still people out there thinking that we are the bad police, but as the name says, ethics committee. We have to be ethical ourselves. We have to pay attention to these things. So the second keyword that I want to touch base upon is fabrication and falsification. What do these mean? Making deliberate or intentional alterations on the methods or findings of research. So you have done your research. I usually talk to scientific community in the sense that biologists, chemists, physicists. This is my first time delivering a talk in front of architects, actually. So excuse me if I say something wrong, because my examples usually come from science. So what does it mean to deliberately, intentionally alter methods? So you go into the lab, in my case, and then you get a result out of your experiments, and then you notice that you see someone else's work along the same line being published, but you haven't reached to that kind of a level as the competitors per se. So you think, okay, can I alter this picture a little bit to make it look nicer? Can I add this result although I didn't get it in the lab? Can I just change this? Well, these are no-nos. You cannot do that. There are scientists international that they have done it from China, from Hong Kong, and they have been caught, and even their degrees are taken aback. So their PhDs are dissolved, their professorships are dissolved. The publications have been taken out of the journals that they have published because they have fabricated the findings. This is not being a scientist. Science is not all about that. So you need to be able to express yourself in the sense that whatever the research is that you're fulfilling, it should be your results, not somebody else's results, or not some results that have not appeared in the lab while you were working. Presenting research by violating its integrity, making false claims of using research materials or tools which have not been used in the application of your research. Deliberately altering research data and records. So these are all things that should not be done, and it is part of unethical, approaches in science in general. The following keyword that I want to touch base upon is duplication. Duplication refers to publishing the same article or translated version of it. We do come across to these things as well. For example, somebody writes an English article and someone in another language, let it be Turkish or Persian or Arabic, students they think that they are doing a good job by translating one language to another, and at the end of the day, they are satisfied from what they're doing because they have spent time and they have put in labor to translate that thing. But that's not the purpose. Translation is not your way of doing things. You are just duplicating someone else's work. It has to come from you. Even if you want to write it in your own language, the research has to come from you, not from somebody else. The next one that I want to touch base upon is salami slicing. I hope everybody had their lunch. And failure to acknowledge. Salami slicing involves publishing the findings of research in least publishable units within multiple articles. That means that you haven't seen the big picture, or you have seen the big picture, but instead of taking the whole data and publishing it in a nice journal, you want to have more than one publication, in some cases 3. You split your results into 2 or 3, and then you send them to different journals, thinking that you achieved a lot of things because you have published in 2 or 3 different journals. This is what is called salami slicing. You shouldn't be doing that. So you have to put in an effort to make the big picture sound very trustworthy of your research, and then publish it in a single journal, and then move on and do another research, do another experiment, and then publish it in another journal. You should not be dividing your whole picture of your single research into partitioning it and then sending it to other journals to be published at the end of the day, thinking that it is advantage to you because you have managed to publish it in different journals. That's not how it works. Failure to acknowledge. This is the support of any individuals, institutions, or establishments in your research. If you do not cite these people, if you are being funded by EMU, and then you had a publication and you have never mentioned about EMU being, supporting you economically to be able to do your research, that is called failure to acknowledgement. So all these things, when it comes to us, when a complaint comes to us regarding unethical issues, we have to go through all these steps, see which one of these criteria belongs to these unethical, situations, as to then we can actually channel it accordingly, how we should be handling it. I'm approaching towards the end, but I again want to share a cartoon with you just to talk about some relevant terms, just to keep you on your feet. The first term is guest authors. What does this mean? You don't just invite your neighbors or your friends to be part of a research project. So, an under-deserving author who is placed on the author list, somebody who does not deserve to be on the list of the authors, okay? Despite minimal contribution to enhance the author list. That means you're a junior, you have, in your next door office, you have a professor who is famous in his findings or her findings, so you just invite that person to be part of your authorship, thinking that you would get credit out of his name or her name. This is a no-no. Gift authors. What does gift authors refer to? An under-deserving author, undeserving author, who is placed on the author list despite minimal contributions again for mutual resume augmentation. What does this mean? This means scratch my back, I will scratch yours. So if I put you on my manuscript, then I expect you to put me on your manuscript, although I did not have any input in your manuscript. So this is referred to as gift authorship. Another one, ghost authorship. An individual who is omitted from the author list despite fulfilling the criteria of being one of the authors. So this is another no-no, because here you have a scientist, a researcher, an academician, scientifically have an input in your research, and you're just omitting that person because you don't like that person. Or you had a quarrel with that person, or you had something, you know, a bad experience with that person towards the end of your work, and then because you're the chief investigator, you decided to kick that person out and then not include that person's name in your manuscript. So this is not correct either. And lastly, coercion authorship, which means giving an individual authorship because he or she asserts that his or her position or actions demand authorship. This is like having a department head or a dean, and then because they are hierarchically they are above you, you feel the need, or you're scared somehow, I don't know, to have their names also as part of the authorship list, although they have no input. Okay? And look at the caricature here. The guy here, it looks like the boss. No, it's my wife's turn to be the first author on your paper. This guy is doing the research, but the boss's wife now wants to be the first author. How bad is that? You know, it's so comical when you look at it, but it is here, the example is here because it is happening, unfortunately. We have a lot of examples taking place. I will share with you some flowcharts which actually you have access from our website. You may not be able to see the writings, but I just included them so that you are familiarized with them, and if you have the need, you can go through our website and then download it and see a bigger version of it. So this one here just explains you, and you follow the arrows. The green, the red boxes tell you that if you answer the questions yes, that means that you will need to fulfill the application for ethical committee. If your answers to the questions that are asked in these boxes are no, the green boxes, that means that you are not required to apply for ethical committee application, but you need to fill in an exempt form. Either way, if you are to graduate, you need to fill in either the ethical application form to be approved by the ethical committee or the subcommittees, or you need to fill in an exempt form so that it would explain that you are exempt from applying to the ethical committee's approval. This first one is to do with human subject research. The second one is to do with animal subject research. So even with the animals, it doesn't matter whether it's a snail, it's a mouse, it's a cat, dog, whatever. You need to go through the list and see whether those animals can be used as lab animals. So there are criteria, there are rules as to how we should be handling humanely these animals that we want to use them as model organisms in our research. So this table will help you deciding on that. So everything is straightforward, you're not lost. So we are evolving as we see different applications that come to ethics committee every day, which is very good. And I'm really surprised, and thank you all for attending today, because this is a really crowded situation in the sense that a lot of people tells me that you guys are interested in ethical issues and you are interested in fulfilling the necessities of these ethical issues. This last one here, again, it's a very crowded slide. I have given in my references, you will see that I have references for all of these because I didn't create some of these pictures. So, did I plagiarize? If you want to find out during the research that you're fulfilling whether you have plagiarized something or not, you go through these charts and then see what the answers are. Yes, no, you know, you can find out the answers. And these are my references. You can take pictures of this, so you can go to these sites, and there are many more information which is actually involved regarding the ethical applications, ethical issues, and all the definitions that I gave you. One thing that I want to also mention before I finish is that we take pride in our students, because even in starting from the second year students in the molecular biology and genetics department, we tend to have reports being written, teaching them how to write these reports, and then reports are submitted through what we call a Turn-It-In program. So what Turn-It-In program does is that once the student submits it, it tells them the similarity index, meaning that how much of copying they have done. If the similarity index is high, that means they cheated a lot. If it is low, they cheated less, but we have to read it so that it makes sense. Sometimes the gibberish that they write, you might get like a 0 similarity index, but whatever they have written does not make any sense, because they just change the words without sentences making much sense. So we have to do that. So what I'm trying to address here is that our students at the undergrad level, they start going through these processes in the second year, sophomore year. We don't wait until graduate studies. So they are trained on this. Even their lab reports, they submit it through the Turn-It-In program, so that not only they are trained, but also they are prepared for their future studies. And thank you for listening to me. Thanks.